Not recording. I was sharing my screen, but wasn't recording. All right. So welcome to class. This is microbiology. I need to do some paperwork before we get started. And that is there were a number of students, 5 of them to be in fact, that requested to join the class. And I need to know if any of them are currently online now, meaning you're a student who is trying to join the class, but you haven't joined the class yet. Is anyone here who's that way? You need to unmute your microphone.
Oh, my name is Shiva, and I'm in the Zoom class right now. Shiva Bali.
Just a minute, I'm not seeing this. Why isn't that showing for me? All right, let's do it this way. For some reason, I wasn't getting that to show. So Shiva Bali, is that what you said your name was?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And Bali, B-A-L-I?
Yep, correct.
Okay. All right. I just need to know who's attending, because if there is room available, I will allow someone who's been attending to join the class. Anyone else? Like I said, you do need to open the Zoom window. And boy, I'm not getting that to share for some reason. I'm not sure why my Zoom isn't working. Let me try it now.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I was on the wait list and I got added to the class last week.
No, if you're added to the class, I don't need to know your name. Okay.
Okay.
Because you're already in the class. I need to know the names of those who I sent an email and they wanted to add the class, and I gave them the information to attend the Zoom class, but they are not in the class. I need to know their names so that if room becomes available, I can add them. And I won't know for sure until Friday. There might be a possibility if somebody drops out earlier, I could add you earlier, but on Friday, I've got to find out who's attending class, and someone who's not, I'm going to drop them. All right, it sounds like there's nobody else, so we will continue. And like I said, I tried showing you how to do that, and I'm not succeeding. I'm not even getting my Zoom window to just show to you. It's supposed to be if I go there, you can see the Zoom window. That's not the one. That's the one I want. And I can't get it to show while I'm sharing my screen for some reason. But you go there and on the bottom, you unmute the microphone. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. I have to stop the share to see how to do this. Yeah, on the very left, there's the mute button. You probably didn't hear me there for a minute, but click on the unmute button or the mute, and then that will turn on the microphone. When you're not talking, you should have it mute. I've got it set so that students will be automatically muted, but to talk, you need to unmute the microphone. And if you want to send me a message, please do it while talking. If you like raise your hand, I guess you can't see this, or what is it? Send me a text message. When I'm sharing my screen, I won't see any of that. And so I do not use those features of Zoom. And in fact, when they first were teaching me how to use them, they mentioned that if you want to use the features of raise your hand and read the text messages, you really need 2 instructors, one to watch that and another person to lecture. Well, guess what? You've only got 1 instructor. And so I'm going to be lecturing. And if you want to comment, you cannot send a text message. What do they call that? Chat. Do not use the chat. I don't use it. Okay. Do not raise your hand either. I won't see either of these unless I stop sharing my screen. And while I'm lecturing, I will share my screen. Any question about any of that? All right, I'm sharing my screen now, and obviously I can't share the Zoom screen for some reason. So, welcome to class. Today is July 11th. In the syllabus, the back of the syllabus, we have the scheduled class. I just want to show you that now, and then we'll talk about the syllabus. But today, we're going to be talking about in the lecture, technology, the syllabus, tips for success, a little bit of scientific vocabulary. In the entire class, we will be introducing many terms and defining them. And so you will learn a lot of vocabulary. And then we'll talk about chapter 1, the microbial world and you. And with chapter 1, we're going to talk about a little bit of chapter 10, the classification of microorganisms. If you have the custom edition to the textbook, which is sold at Clark College, that'll be page 264 to 272. And I don't know if that's that page actually in the full edition of the textbook. We'll talk about that in a minute. On the left side, we have the lecture. Your first quiz will be a practice quiz, which will be due next Wednesday. And it is true, you do need to take by this Saturday, online plagiarism quiz, which has to be completed by 11:59 p.m. Saturday, July 15th. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You can take this plagiarism quiz something like 7 times. It is worth points. I think it's worth 20 points, but I'll have to look that up. I don't remember off the top of my head. Sorry. But it is worth 20 points if you do take the plagiarism quiz. You must get 100% on the plagiarism quiz. If you fail to get 100%, then you'll get 0 points on the infectious disease research project. That's worth 100 points. You don't want 0 out of 100 points. So if you don't get 100% on the plagiarism quiz, take it again. I think I've got it set where you can take it 7 different times. And they will be the same questions, but the answers may shift. So what used to be A could be B, but it will be the same questions and answers. You just have to make sure you select the same answer. Any questions about any of that? We will talk a little bit more about the plagiarism tutorial and the plagiarism quiz. On the right side of this, what do you call this? This table is the laboratory schedule. We'll talk more about that when we cover the lab. And I don't think we have a lab today. Let me look. Or do we have a lab today? Sorry, my mouse isn't working. So I gotta head to it slowly. Still isn't working. Yeah, we do have a lab at 7 p.m. today. So let's go back to that. And I'll talk more about this in the lab. Any questions about what we're going to be doing and the schedule? On the schedule, let me state that the major assignments and when things are due, like the quizzes, they are listed. However, not everything is listed. Generally, for most of the lectures in the lab, there will be at least one worksheet. I think for chapter 8 in the lecture, there are actually 2 worksheets, but every other worksheet, there's one for each chapter. And that is due at 11:59 p.m. on Saturday during the week of the lesson. That is not shown on the schedule unless it's different than the Saturday, like the last worksheet to chapter 14 is due on 8/29. I think that's a Wednesday. And that's because we don't even meet during Saturday. The class ends, I think, on Friday or maybe Thursday. One of those two. And so that one is on the schedule for when that one is doing. I think that's the only one that's an exception. Oh, there is one other that's an exception, and that's in the lab. We'll talk about it with the lab, and that is lab 00 is due at 8 a.m. Friday morning, the first week of the class. There it is right there. You must turn in lab 00 by 8 a.m. Friday morning. If you do not, then I will drop you from the class. So I'm using lab 00 to check on who is attending and who is not. And if you do not turn in lab 00 by 8 a.m. Friday, you will be dropped from the class. Any question about any of that?
I had a question about that one.
Uh-huh.
So for me, since I'm not in the class yet and I'm waiting to be in the class, how would I turn that in?
You're an exception. You can't turn it in until I add you to the class. Once I add you to the class, you will be able to turn it in. So I'll probably just extend it. It is possible you could mail it to me. However, you don't have access to the Canvas email, which is the one I prefer to use. Oh, I got the mouse to work. But you could mail it in here. However, you don't have access to the lab module or to the worksheet. So the only way you could get it in would be for me to email it to me. And if you remind me, send me an email. I will email those to you. But like I said, I'm not going to worry about you because you're not officially in the class yet. Okay? So you're
Okay, thank
all right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I prefer the email in Canvas. I'll be checking my email in Canvas at least every other day. At least every other day, I'll be checking the email in Canvas. Oftentimes, like Monday through Friday, I'll be checking the Canvas email every day. Now on Sunday, I am not going to be working in the class, okay? On Sunday, that's my day to rest, and I will be not checking the email, not checking your assignments. So on Sunday, I will never check the email or generally your assignments. Like we'll talk about the unknown project later in the term. I will not deal with that on Sunday. On Saturday, I may not check the email and I may not check your assignments. And then on Saturday, sometimes I will. So on Saturday, it's give or take, but on Sunday, I will not. So if you send me an email on Friday and it's after I've already looked, I'm not going to get it possibly until Monday. So just be aware of that. And that's in the Canvas email. If you send it to my clark.edu email, I'm only going to check this email twice a week. And so I may not reply to that very soon. So if you want a quick response, please use the Canvas email. If you use the Clark EDU, I'm not going to check it very often. The main reason is I get a lot of junk mail in that one. And I don't do a lot of business with it, so I will not check that more than twice a week. I do have an office, however, I'm not going to be on campus because I'm teaching online this term. And I should mention a problem. Can you guys see my screen here? See the time there? That's slow. And I just got this time. I took it into Clark College to get this computer to have the time right, and then to get it to stop checking on the time. And there's something wrong with this computer. It doesn't keep the time right. And already, when was that? It was probably not more than 2 months ago, maybe less than 2 months ago. And already in 2 months, this clock is 2 minutes slow. So be expecting me to start class a little bit on the late side because my time isn't correct. And I'm going to have to get used to logging in with Zoom. So I'll try and get better at doing that. As long as I remember my password, I'll have an easier time to get in. Any question on any of that? What to do if you want to talk to me during office hours? We can make arrangements online or by email, or we can get together after the lab. After all students have dropped out of the class, we can talk after the lab. Or if you don't mind other people listening in, we can actually do it during the lab. I will lecture at first, but once I'm done lecturing, I stay in the lab just to answer any students, and then you guys can start working on the lab. And if you have a question, I'll be there to answer the question. And usually, starting at 7 o'clock, I will lecture maybe till 7:30, talking about the lab. And then I will stop talking and you guys can work on the lab. I will be in the lab until at least 9 o'clock or until the last student logs out. Once the last student logs out, I'm going to log off as well. So if you have a question and you're not attending the lab, then you should log in early in the lab to ask your question. Because once all the students log out, I will log off as well. Any question about any of that? As far as I know, I'm the only online instructor who actually sits there and then answers questions in the lab. Most people in an online class, they just set it up and there's no give and take. There's no lecturing, live lecturing. It's all online. And by the way, the class will be recorded. If ever you don't see that I'm recording, please let me know so I can start recording. Whenever that button is red, then I know that we're recording. But actually to see it, I've got to stop sharing and then I can see whether I'm recording or not. Generally, I will record the lecture and then put it up on my youtube.com website. And you do not have to attend class. I'm not going to be taking roll. I do know who's attending and I can check to see who is attending, meaning I can go in there and see who has viewed the YouTube website and how long they viewed it. And if I record for like an hour for the class, most of them will be longer than that. But if I do, and I notice you're only watching the first half hour, I can take a look into that. So I do know what's going on, meaning I can access that information. But the point is, you do not have to attend the Zoom class. The class, if everything works well, I will record it and then put the recording up on my YouTube website. And then you can view it later. The only thing that must be done is you must get in lab 00 by 8 a.m. Friday. And that's really the only time I will take attendance. Anyone who doesn't turn that in, will be dropped from the class. You turn in any other assignment, late or otherwise, don't turn it in, that's fine. I'm not going to police you. If you do turn it in late, you cannot turn it into Canvas. You do have to email it to me, and I prefer it sent to the Canvas email. And you will get a late penalty. So you do not generally want to turn in things late because of the late penalty. And if I remember correctly, let me go and look into that. The penalty for late assignments is there's a 25% penalty on the first day it's late. Thereafter, there's a 50% late penalty until I return the assignment. And generally, I don't return assignments on the online class. I will send you corrections and I will tell you what's wrong, but I do not generally turn back assignments. Any question about any of that? All right, if not, let's talk about the syllabus. We are going to be online for both the lecture and the lab. I will be your instructor. We will meet from 5 to 6:50, at least most days, for the lecture. We'll start at 7 p.m. and we will go till about 9 o'clock or until the last student logs out. Lately, students have always been logging out early, but I will stay there until the last student logs out. Already talked about that. Let's talk about the textbook. There are some options you can take for the textbook. We are using Microbiology, an introduction by Tutora, Funk, and Case. You may buy from the bookstore the 3rd custom edition, which only has the chapters that we're going to cover. And, or you could get, well, you could get the e-textbook. And I think the bookstore sells that, but you could buy it directly from the publisher, in which case it's probably cheaper. You may also buy the full 12th edition of the textbook. Please note the 12th edition is not the current edition. The 13th edition is the current edition. However, the 12th edition is the same as our custom edition made for Clark College. We have not updated the custom edition to the 4th custom edition yet. So please, if you're getting the full edition from the textbook or some other web page, then buy the 12th edition. It's actually cheaper than the 13th edition, especially if you were to find it used, but you can get it new, including new from the publisher. There are some optional texts. A photographic atlas for the microbiology laboratory. This provides photographs of microorganisms and the microbiological techniques you'll be learning. That is in the library. The microbiology coloring book is an optional text which the bookstore sells. I thought I had the edition there. I'll have to look into that. And then the book, Getting Ready for Microbiology. The photographic atlas is not currently in the library on course reserves, but hopefully I will get it on course reserves the next time I go into Clark College. They're sitting in the office of the main instructor of microbiology, who is currently on sabbatical and in, I think, Sydney, Australia. And that's where they are, in his office. And he told me I can go in there and grab it and then take it to the library. But I just got that email yesterday, so. And I have not gone into Clark College, but hopefully I'll get that and put it on the course reserves. There's also the book, Get Ready for Microbiology. which there are 2 editions of that in the course reserve, and you can get that as an optional textbook, also in the bookstore. Some other resources, mainly Canvas. It has my lecture notes, worksheets, the lab modules, lab projects. It does have objectives and class notes. Let me talk a little bit about that. Let's see, I think I've got that here. So this is our Canvas website. And what you do is you just click on the link. Let me show that. So log into Canvas and then click on the link. I'm going to have a picture here. I haven't added it yet, but summer 2023, Biology 260. Click on that. And then that comes to here, this page here. I've already got that open, so let's close that. This will be very good. For example, I've got the syllabus up here. I've got the first reading you should do talking about the class, a student and technical help. For example, for taking this class, you need to download Respondus Lockdown Browser to take the quizzes, except for maybe the practice quizzes. Although no, the practice quizzes need Respondus Lockdown Browser, except for the plagiarism quiz. All of the quizzes use the Respondus Lockdown Browser. And if you have trouble with it, click on this link, Student and Technical Help. I once had a student who didn't get it to run, and she deleted it and then downloaded it again. It didn't work. And she did this 5 times and then sent me an email complaining, I can't get it to work. And I simply said, well, thanks for letting me know. You should contact the computer help desk. They're experts at getting the system working on your system. You probably need to switch what do they call that? A parameter on your computer. There's another name for that. They need to switch I can't think of what else to call it, so I'm just going to call it a parameter on your computer to get it to run. And they're experts at this, and they can get it to work on almost anybody's computer. Usually, I only have about 1 student every other term who has trouble getting Respondus Lockdown Browser to work on their system. And all they need to do is change 1 setting, that's the word I wanted, on their computer to get it to work, meaning their computer has the wrong settings, and the computer help desk can help you change the settings and get it correct. I cannot help you with that, but I can send you to the help desk and they can help you with that. So far, in all the years that I've used Respondus Lockdown Browser, I've only had 1 student who never got it to work. And this student was not doing what I was telling her to do. So I'm assuming this student never did what the computer help desk told her to do. And she was the only student who never got Respondus Lockdown Browser working on her computer. What she did was she actually went in to Clark College and took the exam on a computer, and they have some that have Respondus Lockdown Browser on it. And then she took the quizzes and the exams on campus, okay? But there's only been 1 student who have never gotten it to work on their system, but there have been a number of students, about 1 every other term, who has trouble. And like I said, you just need to change the settings. This is a link telling you where my website is. You need to click the second link right here to get to it, meaning you can't open any site outside of Canvas, inside of Canvas. But if you click that link, it'll take me to my YouTube website, and there's a lecture from last term. You should read about Zoom, and then that's the Zoom meeting invite that I emailed to all of you. Some notes about lockdown browser requirement. It gives you a link for downloading it and how to get it up and running on your system. Generally, you just install it for most of you. You can read about that. I'll talk about that in the lab. Some of the movies and links in the class for the YouTube website. Generally, I have a link in my lecture for getting them, but this has them all together. And then if you don't have the textbook, here's a link for the first 3 chapters of the textbook. And then it has each of the chapters, I think it's summary. So it does not have the entire textbook, and that's because of copyright laws. But we have that up here mainly for the time when the bookstore runs out of the textbook, that you can access this to get the first 3 chapters. And there's the information about the plagiarism tutorial. Click on that link. And then when you're done with that, take the plagiarism quiz. The quiz must be done by 11:59 p.m. this Saturday. You must get 100 points on it, which are 100%, sorry, which is worth 20 points. If you do not get 100%, then you will get 0% on the infectious disease project. Any question about that? This link I need to work on. The library has changed their site, so this link isn't quite working, and I will try and do that. It's just a class guide on how to do citations, APA citations. And then week 1 lecture. For all of the lectures, I have the study guide. And in some of them, actually, I think in the summer, I only have the study guide. In the study guide, at the start, there will be the objectives. All of the quiz questions come from the objectives. And then after the objectives come the chapter 1 notes. Chapter 1 is different because it has chapter 10 in it. I've got the objectives for chapter 10 in here too. And then the notes for chapter 1. And then at the very end, the notes for chapter 10. This will be the same material that we are covering in class. However, it will not be a slideshow. It will be information in, what do you call this? In sentences, but this outline format, okay? So you do have the notes in outline format. Initially, you will not have the notes in the PowerPoint. The reason why I do not allow you to get the notes at the start is I want you guys to take your own notes. Why? Because students learn the best from their own notes, and they learn the material 2 times better from their own notes than they would from my notes. So I want you guys to take your own notes. And while I'm lecturing, you should be taking your own notes. Or if you're watching the video on my YouTube site, you should be taking your own notes. And then review your own notes. It's best to review them within 24 hours, and then your short-term memory is still intact, and you can add things to your own notes. And then, of course, review them before a quiz or an exam. Any question about any of that? But once we finish the lesson, I will post the the PowerPoint. Not in PowerPoint, it'll be in PDF format. There's the worksheet for chapter 1. This needs to be done by Saturday, July 15th. It's worth 2 points. Let's go there. Now, why do I have that on the first one? You only need to answer one of the questions, and they need to be answered in the order they are in the worksheet. Why you must answer them in the order in the worksheet is so that when people read it, it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you were to do 1 and then 10, it'll be really difficult for students to figure out which questions have been answered and which questions have not been answered. If you do it in the order of the worksheet, it's very easy to determine which question has been answered and which question is not. You just read, and then you say, they finished question 6, I need to answer chapter 7. If you do not like that question, just wait. Somebody else will log in and they will answer that question. And then you log in later and then answer the question that is the next question on the worksheet. So everybody has to do it in order. If you do not do it in order, the first time you'll get a warning. And then after that, I will give you a penalty. So answer the questions in the worksheet. You should also, when you answer the question, you should, oh, look at that. Somebody's already answered questions. That's pretty good. Let's see if that's correct. You should put the question in there, because if you just give the answer, it won't mean much to a student who's reading it. Up, Wyra, you didn't follow the questions in the order, so please follow the questions in the order. This will be graded, so make sure if you don't know the answer, you look it up. You only need to answer one question. And actually, this one is going to be filled up. And I think I've got on there what to do once it's full. What you should do if it's full is, come on, meaning all the questions are answered, then try to answer a question that you think is wrong. If all of the answers look right, then just start over with question 1 and answer that to get your points. But the point is, you need to put the question in there so that students, when they read it, they know what the answer goes to. Like if this person only said 1, Carolus Linnaeus, it'd be very hard to figure out what does that go to. So the naming and classifying of organisms was begun in the 18th century by, and then put your answer. Okay. Any questions about how to do the worksheet? We're a full class, so there will be more than 13 answers. The point is that the lecture is supposed to be easy. You're only given one question generally to answer, and you only need to answer that, and then you can get the answers from the other members of the class. You probably will want to print this out and then write in the answers, or I suppose you could just print out the entire page, although the format will not be good. If you just print this out, then you can just write in the answers. Any question about the worksheet? I do have some extra credit projects. I'm not going to talk much about them. You need to click on them to see what you need to do, but there are 2 available this week. The picture is due July 22nd. The extra credit study sheet is due this Saturday. For the picture, just send me a picture on this assignment. And I guess I should mention that with this one here. When you're done, well, no, that one you don't need to put in. That one's different. So with this one, let's go there. Come on, come on. My mouse isn't working, so I'm having trouble. You will have an upload page. I don't have that. I've got the speed grader page. Let me go ahead and see if anyone's uploaded their picture yet. All right, somebody's uploaded their picture, although I'm not seeing it. That's not the right format. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to open that. Let's see if I can display that. See, this is not, I'm not able to display that. So please, I thought I had that set up that you were only supposed to download a file that I could open. And what they did was they didn't upload the file, they uploaded a link, which is probably why it's not working. And supposedly all of the assignments have a restriction on the file type, and I don't even know what file type HEIC is. I cannot open it. So this is not, you're not going to get any points for that. Okay, so please follow the directions. And anyways, you'll have a link here or over here on the right side for uploading the assignment. And let me check to make sure that's set up. Oh, that was not restricted. My problems here. ENG, I think. Oops.
Hi, I submitted the EC extra credit pick. It was a JPEG. Are you able to open that?
I should be able to.
Okay.
Let's see, what's the other thing that I have? I'm not remembering what else. Most people won't send it in a docx, but I'll do that. What other file formats can a picture be in? Anyone remember?
I think one of them is a PDF, right? Like a dot PDF.
I can take a .pdf.
Okay.
On assignments, I generally will not allow a PDF because I cannot do a, what do you call it? A check for plagiarism with a .pdf. But for the file, the picture, I'll allow a PDF. All right, I think that's it. And my apologies, I didn't have that set up. That should be set up. I'll have to look into that. All right, let's close that down, come back here. The extra credit study sheet, you get 3 points if you turn in your daily schedule on the log, and I'm not going to open that here. I'm just going to get it here. I'm not sure where that is, so I guess I will open it here. It has several tabs. On the first will be your daily schedule. If you don't want to give me much information, you can put in things like personal time, family time, work, but you do need to put in the personal schedule, okay? If you just put in, I don't know, personal time for everything, that's not right. I need to compare your personal schedule with your study schedule. You have several logs here. On this one, put in your study schedule for week 1, and I'll compare it to the schedule to make sure it makes sense. And If you have week one the same, you're going to plan on studying each week the same. All you need to do is have the first log and the schedule filled in. However, if week one will be different than week two, then fill in your study schedule for week one on log one and your schedule for week two on log two. And if you need to add more logs, just add more logs by clicking this button here. Like I said, you'll get 3 points for putting in your study schedule and 3 points for your daily schedule. So for a total of 6 extra credit points, the picture is either worth 3 or 4 extra credit points. There will be a few other extra credit assignments. We'll talk about them when they're due. And then that's it for week one. And then we have week one lab, and I'll talk about that when we come to the lab. Any question about any of that? If not, let's continue with the syllabus. It's your responsibility to stay up in class, to visit the website. If ever I change the schedule, I will make an announcement. And generally, I send it out in an email as well. Course description, you can read about that. Student outcomes, you can read about that. Course policies and suggestions. If you're sick, contact me and I'll help you keep on track in this online class. Please contact me prior to any due dates to make arrangements for turning in assignments late. For preparation for class, you should consult the tentative lecture and lab schedule frequently, read the material before the relevant session. The course will be very busy, especially in the summer. For the labs, it helps if you read the lab module before you come into the lab. Now, if you read it after I am done lecturing, that's fine, okay? But if you have read it beforehand, and then after my lecturing, you can start working on the lab right away. And then if you have questions, you can ask them. Attendance and participation, except for lab 00. Oh, crud, what's coming on here? There's not going to be any attendance and participation. You do need to finish the first lab, or you will be dropped from the class. But other than that, if you were to miss too many labs, your grade will be dropped. But this is an online class, so you can always view the labs online later. I'll let you read about wearing masks, student responsibilities. You should know the due dates of assignments. They are listed in the syllabus and in Canvas, meaning they are listed on the Canvas calendar, as well as in the main page. They will be listed in the week they're due. Labs have 2 due dates. Let me mention a little bit about that. The first due date is the first day the lab is due. And your labs are going to be graded 2 times. The first time I grade them, which will always be Saturday of the week that we discuss the lab. So I guess the worst case would be we have a lab on Thursday. That lab worksheet is due Saturday at 11:59 p.m. The first time it is due, I will grade it and I will tell you what answers are wrong. You then can submit a correction by the time of the second due date, and you can do that for full credit, for 100%. The labs will be graded twice because I consider the lab a learning exercise. Any question about that? Now, how do I explain that? in Canvas. So lab 00 is due Friday at July 14th. Lab 01 is due Saturday. And lab 1 may show wrong because I've got them together, but it actually is going to be due Saturday at 11:59 p.m. How do I go into that? All right. The due date is the first grading. The until date is the second grading. Now, I'm going to strive to get the first grading done within a week so that you have time to get in the correction. However, the second grading will get graded when I have time. I'm making no promises for when the second grading will be done. Oftentimes, the second grading will be postponed because I'm going to put priority on the first grading so that when the first lab is graded, before the second grading will be due, the second lab will have its first grading due. And so I'll grade the second lab, not grading the second grading of the first lab. Is that clear? And all assignments with the lab will be this way. I'll put priority on the first grading, and generally I'll get it graded within 1 week of submission so that you have time to submit the second grading. Usually I'll try and get it graded by Monday or Tuesday, so you have that much time to get it turned in by Saturday. If ever I'm later than Tuesday, I'll probably extend that date when it's due. So if I get it graded like on Wednesday, what I do is I extended it to probably Tuesday. Any question on any of that? If I get it graded by like Saturday, meaning it's due on Saturday and that's when I get it graded, I would postpone it for an entire week, the second grading. The labs are the only assignments that you will be graded 2 times on. And hopefully you will like that, because if you get the question wrong, you have a second chance to get the question right. Actually, I don't need that. We can shut that down. Keep all materials until the final grading is done. It's your responsibility to find out what you've missed and then make that assignment. If something is recorded wrong, keep your assignment so that you can notify me, and then I'll take a look at it and make corrections. Generally, I very seldom do that, but if something is recorded wrong, then you can show it to me. Laboratory safety rules must be followed. We'll talk about more about that in the lab. All interactions, including student to student, student to instructor, and instructor to student, should be cordial, businesslike, professional. And with me, I'll try and be friendly. This includes all communications and emails. Everything should be phrased in a positive, non-confrontational, non-offensive language. We don't have to agree. In fact, we could strongly disagree. However, we must be respectful. Any question about any of that? All right. For my responsibilities, I'll try to respond to all Canvas emails within 48 hours. I'll try to respond to Clark emails within about a half a week. I'll try to have all assignments graded within a week of the due date, but I want you to note that big assignments will take me more than a day to grade. And that's assuming that I'm spending the entire day grading it. And there will be at least 2 big assignments in this class. And they will take longer than a week to grade from when we turn it in. Our labs will be graded 2 times. The first grading will be graded within a week. The second grading, no promises of when I'll get them graded. They may be very late. Course withdrawal, I'll let you read about that. If you do want to withdraw from the course, you should probably make up your decision by this week. And then you can drop the class and get 100% refund. After this week, and I don't remember if it's Friday or Saturday in the summer, but after one of those days, if you were to withdraw from the class, you'll have to pay for the class 100%. So if you do think about dropping the class, make sure you do it this week, and then you'll get 100% refund. And you must make course withdrawals. I cannot do that. The exception is this Friday, I will drop students from the class if they're not attending. If you simply stop attending, you will likely get the grade you have earned, which will likely be an F because you'll be missing so many assignments. I already talked about late assignments. Student conduct. Generally, the only trouble I run into is students cheating or plagiarizing. And generally it's both, because students share an answer and then they turn in the same answer. That is plagiarizing whenever you're using 3 or more words that are not your own. If ever you're doing that, you will score a 0 for that assignment. What you can do if you want to plagiarize is put it in quotes and then say where you got it from. Let's say your study buddy gives an excellent answer to one of the questions on the lab, and you want to use that question word for word. Then put it in quotes and say where you got it from. That is not plagiarizing, because you're giving credit from where you got it from. On the other hand, what you could do is take that answer and then word it in your own words. And as long as you don't have more than 3 words of your study buddy, that is not plagiarizing. And then students will do this and share the assignment. That's actually cheating when you turn in the same assignment and plagiarizing. If that's ever happens, I will give you a 0 on that assignment. You should not do the quiz and then give your study buddy the quiz question and the quiz answers. That's cheating, and you can read about that. You could be turned into the Dean of Student Affairs for further disciplinary action. But generally, if I see plagiarizing or cheating, you'll get a 0 on that assignment. Plagiarism is very important in college. It is actually very important in life too. For example, there was once a sitting senator, and when he was in graduate school, long before he was a senator, he plagiarized someone where he was writing up, I think it was his thesis, but it might have been his dissertation. And he just wrote somebody else's words that he plagiarized from someplace. Somebody discovered it. It might have been the New York Times while he was a sitting senator. And then they called him on it and published it. This senator had to resign his position. A sitting senator had to resign his position for plagiarizing years ago when he was in graduate school. And also, this is somewhat interesting, President Biden, the very first time he was running for the presidency, I don't even remember the year, but the very first time he was running for the presidency, he plagiarized somebody's speech who was a minister in England or a what do they call that? A parliament member in England. And he sent Biden the speech, and Biden plagiarized the speech. He was called on it, and he had to stop running for the presidency. So the first time Biden ran, he had to drop out of the race because he plagiarized somebody else's speech. So plagiarism is important in life. Any question about any of that? You can read about the etiquette for Zoom. Messages for student, translation services, suggested study methods. I'm going to tell you that this class is going to be extremely busy, especially in the summer, especially in the middle of the term. You're going to be spending about 7 hours of class in a week in class, either listening to the lecture or the lab or doing the lab assignment and then viewing the lecture online. However, you are expected to put in about 7 hours each week studying, doing assignments, and other work on the lab for a total of 14 hours of class. Each week. If you do not have the time to put into this class this term, perhaps you should take this class sometime when you'll have more time to devote to this class. Any questions about any of that? You can read about the passing grade in Biology 260, how students learn. Come on, mouse. You can go to the VARC website for finding out how you learn best. Here's a list of suggestions to help you study effectively. Use what works for you. Take on manageable chunks of material. Only a section of your chapter at one point in time. Unless you're brilliant, trying to learn too much at one time will actually overload your system and be counterproductive. You can use concept mapping to help you learn. Be organized. You're going to have several concurrent assignments due. You may feel lost without having proactive organization. You should use the first 10 or 15 minutes before class to skim the previous class notes and then the upcoming class to help you remember where we left off and get you in the proper mindset for class. This sounds simple, but come to class. Many instructors, including yours, have noted that there's a strong attendance between, strong correlation between attendance and grades. Obviously, if you come to class, you're going to hear the material one time. Quizzes are going to be over the material in the lecture and the lab. Listen in class. If you're only writing notes, you're not actually listening and then learning. What you want to do is take sketchy notes, listen to the lecture, and then after class, go over your notes to add to the notes. If you go over your notes within 24 hours, you'll retain much in short-term memory, and then you can add to the notes. You want to take notes because if you take notes, you actually learn the material 2 times better than if you're simply listening or simply learning. Reason being is that when you listen, you're learning the material, and then when you are writing, you're translating the material in one part of your brain, moving to another part of the brain to do the writing, and that means you're getting exposure to the material 2 times, or at least your brain is being exposed to it 2 times. I usually ask my students, but we're running out of time here. Simply going over the material like listening and then going over your notes and then taking notes, that would be going over it 3 times, will not be enough. When you're learning a piece of material, like you're playing something on the piano, or you're learning, I don't know, something for Olympic athletes, you have to go through repetition many times before you learn it. And they've done studies, they always do studies on middle school age students, but they found that these students, to actually learn the material, they have to go over the material 20 times before they can learn the material. Now, you guys are adults, and if you really want to learn this material, you can learn it by going over it fewer than 20 times, but you do need to repeat going over the material. So what you should be doing is reviewing your notes throughout the term, as well as review them before the quizzes and the exams, as well as listen, write notes, go over the notes after class, that's 3 times, go over the notes before the quizzes, and then at least once throughout the time. That will be going over the notes 5 times. That is actually a little bit short, even for adults who want to learn the material. You'll need to go over it more times than that to actually learn the material. Any question about that? Try active strategies like forming study groups, quizzing each other, writing mock exam questions, and then answering the questions. Another way that's very good at learning material is actually to teach the material. That is actually the best way to learn the material. So if you're helping somebody else in the class, you're going to be teaching them. You will learn the material better, and you won't be hurting your grade, because I haven't talked about how this class is graded, but we're going to talk about it next. This class is not graded on a curve. So if you help somebody else learn the material, you will be only helping yourself. You won't be hurting yourself by increasing the competition, for example. Grading, 20 points for the plagiarism quiz, 5 quizzes at 75 points, but you will get to drop your lowest quiz. So the total of quizzes will be 4 quizzes for a total of 300 points. If you have a valid reason for missing a quiz, I will allow you to take it late, but you must let me know in advance, and the quiz must be taken within 48 hours that the quiz was due. After 48 hours, the quiz answers will show. After the quiz answers show online, I will not allow you to take the quiz. Any question about any of that? There will be worksheets for each lab for a total of 50 points. Each lab will be graded twice. The first grading will be due the Saturday of the week we do the lab. Generally, the second grading will be due a week later, assuming I get it graded on time. Lecture worksheets, about 1 for each lecture, for a total of 25 points. And they're due the week that we do that material. There's the identification of the unknown bacteria. That's worth 75 points. It's a lab project. We'll talk more about that later. There's the infectious disease research project. That is worth 100 points. That also is a lab project. And remember, if you do not get 100% on the plagiarism quiz, you only get 0 points on this infectious disease research project. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, infectious disease research. There will be a final cumulative exam worth 150 points. It'll be mostly multiple choice questions. There will be a few fill in the blank questions, probably only about 5 fill in the blank questions. About 20% of the material will come from the lab and the identification of your unknown project. About 50% of the cumulative final exam questions will come from the last 2 weeks of the class, which is the material you have not been tested on. The remaining material will be over the class material that you have been quizzed on already, and that'll be about 30% of the material. You must take the final and actually all quizzes within the 24-hour time period. If you are late on the final, you may not take the exam because the class will be ending shortly after the final. And the best I could do would be to put you on, give you an incomplete for the class. So try to take the final during the 24-hour period when the class is done. I guess I haven't mentioned that, and that is the quizzes have to be taken within 24 hours that they are due. So if it's due 11:59 p.m. on a Wednesday, then it must be taken from 11:59 p.m. on the Tuesday before that 11:59 p.m. Wednesday. And it must be finished by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, because if you're taking the quiz and then it becomes after 11:59 p.m., the quiz will shut you out, and any questions you do not answer will be counted wrong. Any question about any of that? All right, so this table is showing you the breakdown of points: 20 for the plagiarism quiz, 300 for the quizzes, 50 for the lab assignments, generally about 1 worksheet for each lab. The unknown project, 75 points. The infectious disease project, 100 points. The lecture worksheets, 25 points. The final, 150 points, for a total of 720 points. That's not counting any extra credit assignments. We'll have about 20 points of extra credit. Grades, if you get 92% or more, then you will get an A. If you get 90% or higher, you'll get an A minus. 88% or higher, a B plus. 82% or higher, a B. 80% or higher, a B minus, etc. Note how there's no C minus and then no D plus or D minus. I should mention that this grading scale is slightly different than the grading scale that Canvas gives. So the grading scale on Canvas is a little different. For example, I think they do it 93% instead of 92%, and they do it 87% instead of 88%. We will follow this grading scale because that's the grading scale that's followed by microbiology in Clark College, and I don't know why we're following a different schedule than grading scale than is on Canvas. I just don't know. You can read about question review and written corrections. We'll talk about microscope use in the lab later in the lab. We have a number of support for students, support services for students. You should look at that. I'm not going to talk about it now. I will talk briefly about tutoring services. There is a tutor that you may use. I do not know if there's a tutor for microbiology. Most terms we do have a tutor for microbiology, but not every term. Accommodations, you can read about that. You can read about the library, computer resources, safety and security, you can read about that. Other services for students, you can read about that. If you want to know the enrollment dates and the deadlines, like when you want to drop the class, you can click on this link to get it. One-stop assistance, reasonable accommodations for religion and conscience. I'm going to let you read about that. You read about camera and Zoom, and nobody uses the camera and Zoom. Actually, to me, it is helpful to see my students. And then if I am lecturing on something and I see the students with a puzzled face, I'll know that I didn't explain it very well. And generally I can go over it again. However, when there's no student using a Canvas, I cannot do that. And anyways, that's something on Canvas. It's your choice whether you want to use Canvas. Somebody is using the chat. I cannot see the chat messages while I'm sharing my screen, so I do not use chat. You can read about the non-discrimination policy, school emergency procedures, and then we'll talk a little bit about safety information for students and physicians when we talk about the lab. Here's something I want to talk about: words of advice and comfort. Sometimes it seems your instructors are your enemies. Please don't think I'm your enemy ever. It is true that we must maintain standards so that we cannot always accommodate you. However, know that we instructors want you all to succeed, and that one of the greatest joys in teaching is interacting with our students, getting to know you, and helping you achieve your academic goals. So if you have a problem, a complaint, or concern, come and discuss this with us, with me. The earlier, the better. Don't let them fester. Things usually only get worse if you let them fester. Also understand the COVID-19 pandemic has raised the stress level for the class. I'll try to keep that in mind. And I will work my best to help you enjoy this class, be successful, and maybe even you'll have some fun. Any questions about any of that? My philosophy as an instructor is to help my students. My greatest goal is to help you learn the material. In fact, you don't really need an instructor. I know that. You guys could learn the material on your own. All you need to do is buy the book and then start reading it. The only reason why we have instructors is because it's easier for humans to learn from an instructor than to learn on their own. It is easier, but in reality, you would learn the material better if you were to learn it on your own. But anyways, my point is, I'm here to help you, and I know I'm not needed. You could learn this material on your own. But I appreciate your being in my class. Any question about any of that? All right, lab safety rules. We'll talk about that in the lab. And I think that's it for the syllabus. We already talked about the schedule. So let's move on to chapter 1. And we go to 6:50. When it's 6:45, please let me know and we'll stop it shortly thereafter. Sorry, I downloaded something recently with Microsoft, and that now pops up. It just was an update to Microsoft, and that's obviously always popping up whenever I open something in Microsoft. It's going to be annoying, but I'll have to live with it. Anyways, microbiology, chapter 1, the microbial world in you, and chapter 10, the classification of microorganisms. we're only going to cover page 272 to 281 of chapter 10 in the current edition of the textbook. If you have the earlier edition, which I think would be the second custom edition, that's the page shown there. And you may use an earlier edition of the textbook. I think I forgot to mention that. If you do, it's perfectly fine. You'll just have to figure out what pages to read. Most of the time, I simply assign the entire chapter, so it'd be pretty obvious. But with chapter 10, I'm only assigning some pages. And what you can do is just figure out the classification of microorganisms, what pages that cover, and then only read those pages. Any question about any of that? All right, as is normal, I give you near the start, usually at the start, a slide showing you the major goals for the lesson and a rough outline. So know the terms, what's a microbe, a microorganism, what's a germ, what's a pathogenic organism, what's a parasitic organism, what is microbiota, what's an infectious disease, what's an emerging infectious disease, what is pasteurization, and what is Koch's postulates. Also, we'll talk about a brief history of microbiology and the importance of microbes. Any question about any of that? We're actually going to begin talking about the importance of microbes, although we'll come back to this topic, the importance of microbes. Here you're looking at the nitrogen cycle, talking about the importance of microbes. Nitrogen, you can say, starts in the atmosphere as nitrogen gas. It can be fixed by bacteria and archaea into an organic chemical compound, usually an amino acid or a protein. And then most of that, when the organism dies, will decompose by bacteria, archaea, and fungi. And then the organic source of nitrogen will switch into ammonia or ammonium. Ammonia, just once it mixes with water, will form ammonium. It is true that some of the organic compounds can be directly taken up by plants and other photosynthetic organisms, and some of it can actually degrade into nitrate, but very little of it. Most of that, when it degrades, will be converted into ammonia or ammonium. Green plants can use ammonia or ammonium, but they don't like it. And if they get too much of it, it will make the plant sick. It will discolor and eventually die. Ammonia can be nitrified by bacteria and archaea into nitrite, that's NO2 with a negative charge, and that can be changed by bacteria into nitrate, NO3 with a negative charge. This is the form of nitrogen that green plants love. If you look at any plant fertilizer, it likely has nitrate in it as one of the main ingredients. And then green plants take that up, and then they make organic compounds from it. Most of that organic compound will, when the green plant dies, will be converted into ammonia and then go around and around. And then the nitrate can be converted by bacteria and archaea into nitrogen gas. And there we've finished the nitrogen cycle. Any question about any of that? So how important are microbes in our lives and with the planet? Wherever we see a red arrow, this step of the nitrogen cycle is happening because of microbes. Without the microbes, nitrogen would not move from one form on the planet Earth to another. And without the microbes, the nitrogen would not move around from one source to another. Any question about any of that? So most of the steps in the nitrogen cycle happen because of microbes. The only one that doesn't, the only few that do not, is like ammonia and nitrate can be taken up directly by green plants without the use of a microbe. And then green plants can, when they die, be decomposed into an organic compound, which mostly will decompose into ammonia. Although this step from this one to that one happens because of microbes. Any questions about the importance of microbes in the ecosystem? Without microbes, eventually all the nitrogen would stay in one place on the planet. Probably they'd stay in this step here, meaning they die and then the dead stuff would be on the surface of the earth and it would never be degraded, converting into that step. Microbes are also important in the making of soil. There are rock-eating microbes, microbes that can obtain nutrients from rock. And when they do this, they break down the rock, leading to the formation of soil. Please understand that soil formation is not primarily made by microbes. However, they do make a significant proportion of the soil, maybe 20% of the soil on the planet Earth. The majority of soil on the planet Earth is made by wind and erosion breaking down rocks. So the wind and the water go against the rock and wear down the rock, making the soil. But microbes can help make soil. Any question about any of that? Here we're looking at the atmospheric oxygen levels during the history of the Earth. At the moment, let me blow this up. Oh, not far enough. Not going. There we go. At the moment, present day oxygen is around 21%. And as you look, oxygen level has been rising. In the near past, it was less than 21%. Below that, the rise actually was not as great. It was rising here, but not as great as here. And then before 2.7 billion years ago, we had no oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. So oxygen in the atmosphere was close to 0%. What happened 2.7 billion years ago is that there was bacteria, particularly the cyanobacteria, that evolved and in using photosynthesis started releasing oxygen. That oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere created ozone, which allowed green plants to evolve on the surface of the Earth. Without the first oxygen in the atmosphere blocking the UV light, by ozone blocks UV light, green plants would not have evolved, at least not on the surface of the Earth. They may have evolved in like the water, as long as they're in water, because water prevents UV light. And that's actually what happened here. Before oxygen was in the atmosphere, all living things was in the water. It wasn't until oxygen was in the atmosphere that ozone stopped UV light that life could have evolved on the planet, and green plants were an important feature of evolution at this time. And green plants today make up about half of the oxygen that is released on the planet. So a little more like 10.5% of the oxygen comes from green plants. The remainder of the oxygen comes from microbes. So about half of this oxygen present on the earth comes from microbes and half comes from green plants. Any question about any of that? All right, I guess the point is here that, oops, wrong one. That what happened here that brought oxygen to the Earth's atmosphere were microbes, photosynthetic microbes. And they made oxygen as a waste product. It was released and went into the atmosphere. So microbes have been on the Earth for a long time, making oxygen. Green plants only recently have been making oxygen. Any question about any of that? Here you're looking at a sewage treatment plant. Humans are responsible for making the waste in the sewage plant when we flush our toilets and wash something down our drain. But humans are responsible for breaking it down, right? That's why we make the waste treatment plant, so that we, humans, can break down the waste. Is that right? Does anyone disagree? Come on, guys. It's either a yes or no question.
No, microbes actually break down waste at the sewage plant.
Yeah, that's correct. And that is, we do not break down the waste. We make the facility, but it's actually microbes in the facility which are breaking down the waste. So it's the microbes in the waste treatment plant that break down the waste. Humans do not. Once again, microbes are important for the planet. What do we mean by a microbe? And how do microorganisms differ from microbes? Microorganisms are organisms which are too small to be seen with the unaided eye. Most of them are single-celled. They do take on many shapes and sizes. For microorganisms, we have all the bacteria, all the archaea, all the yeast, many of the molds, all of the protozoans, and some algae. The viruses and prions are also considered microbes. Viruses and prions are special because they are not an organism. They do not have cells, but we do call them a microbe. Some people even call them a microorganism, and they're not really an organism because they don't have cells. So I will not call them a microorganism. However, I will call them a microbe. Some algae are not microbes, like the kelp that washes up on the Oregon and Washington beaches. That is not a microbe. It's way too big. But some microbes, some algae are microbes. Any question about any of that? Microbes are almost everywhere on the planet. So we can call them the ubiquity of microorganisms, meaning generally wherever we look on the planet, we find microorganisms. And what I mean by that, I'm talking about microbes. I will use the term microbe to mean bacteria, archaea, yeast, molds, protozoans, some algae if they're microscopic, viruses, and prions. Microbes play beneficial roles in numerous processes. We mentioned the nitrogen cycle, for example, and then simply microbes are important in breaking down organic matter. So they are important at recycling nutrients within an ecosystem. Microbes are numerically the most abundant life form on the planet Earth. There are more microbes than any other organism or class of organism, meaning there are more microbes than there are eukaryotes. And by the way, the protozoa and the molds and the algae are eukaryotes. Is that right? Is all algae a eukaryote? I might be wrong on the algae. Yeah, I'm wrong on the algae. I have talked about what a cell is, and you notice I snuck it in and never defined it. Let's define what is a cell. The cell is the basic structure and functional unit of all organisms. A cell is a highly organized compartment bounded by a thin, flexible structure that we call the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. All cells contain three components. They all contain the cell membrane, they all contain the cytoplasm, and then they all contain DNA as their genetic material. Any question about any of that? All right, in these pictures here, where would we find microbes? Would we find microbes on the plants? Would we find microbe in the water? Would we find microbe on the rocks? Anyone?
Probably everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. In this picture, everywhere, including in this picture where we do find it in the ocean, and it's also in the air. Microbes are in the air up about a mile above the surface of the earth. And that's because there are particularly light spores, like an endospore or a fungal spore, and they're carried by air drafts in the air. And we can find them up a mile into the air. When we look into the soil or underneath the seabed, we can find microbes down about a mile in the soil or underneath the seabed. Obviously, this does depend on what the soil is. I've got soil here as opposed to like a bedrock of rock. If you did have a rock here, you would not find microbes down a mile because microbes, well, they can't get through the rock. We would find microbes in this picture on both the person and the kitty, as well as the door and the sweater. We would find microbes in the middle of the Sahara Desert. In each inch of sand, we'd find microbes. We find microbes essentially everywhere except in this picture, where we do not find microbes in the lava, shown in red here. We do find microbes on the rocks, and I don't know what that is, if that's ground or water on the side. We do find microbes, and they can be close to the lava, but they cannot be in the lava because microbes die easily and lava is way too hot. And if there were a microbe which were to fall in the lava, it would be quickly killed. Any question about any of that? And I guess this is showing you where we find microbes everywhere in these 5 slides. And then most places in this slide, just not in the vent where there's magma or lava. All right, any question about any of that? If not, I think I'm going to stop here and we'll continue with this lesson next time. I will see you at, I believe, 7 o'clock for the lab. All right, any questions? If not, I'm going to go and I will see you at 7.